I'm telling people, get prepared. I will say it. I am a little more fearful than I was, say, 8-9 months out, where I didn't really see the degree of the food problem and the degree of social unrest. I saw both of them. I did. But I didn't see them at the level that they're currently at now, where I see they're probably going to go.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with the Miles Franklin Market Update. And with us today, one of the top silver experts, David Morgan from the Morgan Report. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Elijah, thank you much. It's good to be back.
Awesome. Great. Well, last time we had you on, we were, seeing this amazing rise in gold and silver. We saw gold hit a new high, a new nominal high, as you mentioned. Really, the actual high for gold, if we look at inflation adjusted, is around $3,000 an ounce, and you made that case last time. But what we're seeing right now is we saw a little pullback. It seemed like a healthy correction for gold and silver because they were going very high, very fast. But now we're seeing them rise again. We're seeing gold above $1,900 an ounce. What is your perspective on why we're seeing gold and silver rise once again?
Well, the fundamental case has been pretty solid all along. But, as some pundits point out, especially Martin Armstrong, it's not just an inflation phenomenon. Because if it was, you basically have a steady rise in gold from, as more money's printed, gold will just keep going up. And that's not the case. It's more of a political uncertainty or uncertainty response, but it also responds to the money supply, and especially silver. So we've seen where a lot of people that kind of thought that, the government in hand has our best interest at heart, and that, this printing is just necessary. A lot of them have come around and seen that this printing is not going to stop, and that it's going to end the way all fiat currencies have ended in the past, and the most likely scenario being that either the bond market corrects massively to shove off all the unpayable debt and it's restructured somehow, or that the currency itself fails, which the latter is what has normally taken place in any previous moment in history and monetary history, because it's actually the easiest thing to do is just rob the people a little at a time and make them believe inflation's good and their house is worth more and, their salary is bigger and everything's okay. And then near the end, people realize that, everyone can be a billionaire and buy nothing. That's the Zimbabwe case. Will we get that in the United States? No, because the debt markets, the bond market is pervasive. I mean, it's the number one most trusted, although it shouldn't be in my view, asset that you can hold. And now people, but a lot of people like myself have questioned that for a very long time. So the long answer is that the fundamental case just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and more people are becoming more aware and more aware and more aware. So we're starting to see the run to gold that I have long forecast. And the run to gold starts with the walk, and then it's a brisk walk, and then it's a jog, and then it's a run, and then it's a sprint. And right now we're probably at the warm up to the jog phase.
What impact, if any, do you think the talk about further stimulus, Congress is trying to get that passed and Trump has been talking about it. What impact would that have on the precious metals?
Well, any money printing in the long run seems to, make the case I just presented. But since this time, we have a difference than we had in the 2008 crisis. In the 2008 crisis, the liquidity, the printing all went, the quantitative easing, into the banking system primarily, the financial system. And that basically, that excess capital that wasn't really useful for productive means went into the stock market. So you saw a fuddling of asset prices that reflected the amount of money printing, but it didn't help Main Street whatsoever. This time, it is helping bridge the gap between where we used to be in 2019 and where we actually are, but we're pretending that we can extend it, as Jim Sinclair often says, that things are okay, they're going to normalize, things will be maybe not the same as they were, but close to it, we'll get through it and all that stuff. Well, we will get through it, but it won't be the same or even close to the same. And now the delaying the inevitable, putting off ripping the Band-Aid off as a metaphor and just trying to pull it off a little bit at a time and a little bit more, really is not going to help the long-term consequences, which means high unemployment for a long time, more uncertainty in the markets. The stock market at some point will wake up to the reality and will probably move down in a substantive way. You also see housing prices probably will come down in some areas of the country, and conversely, probably steady or perhaps even move up in more rural areas that people want to flock to, because if they could sell their 1,100 square foot house in the Bay Area for 1.1 million and move into 10 acres with the solar on it in Idaho, you're going to see that happening. In fact, it's happening right now. But that can only go so long. I mean, if the housing market crashes in the large metropolitan areas, which it's doing as we speak, and continues to a level that most people wouldn't believe could happen, then the ability for those people to cash out and move will go away. And I think that's the trend. So a lot of flux between where we are and where we're really going to be. And I hate to sound like the siren of doom. I don't want to sound that. It's my purpose to really be a realist, not to sugarcoat anything, but I don't want to over-alarm people. But I also don't want to present a case that the mainstream does, which gives inaccurate information.
Definitely. And one of the things that might be adding to the uncertainty, is all the things around the election, right? We saw the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and this fight over the Supreme Court. And we've seen, Trump contracting COVID, a lot of surprises that have led to a lot of uncertainty. And we're entering into this election where there's going to be, mail-in voting, which brings a whole lot of more questions. When are we going to have the election results? Is it going to be November 3rd? Probably not. It looks like it's going to be later. So some people are saying, well, what if Trump ends up ahead on November 3rd, but then the mail-in ballots are coming in and then Joe Biden ends up ahead? It's like all this uncertainty. How are people going to react? There's so much uncertainty in the markets right now, or in the political environment right now. How do you see this really impacting the markets, as we go forward here?
Well, Elijah, let me compliment you on framing a lot of things into one coherent thought, and you're right. My view, first of all, I want to say on a philosophical level, is it kind of proves the point I've been making for years, and maybe subtly and maybe not as forcefully as perhaps I should, because of my trying to remain credible to everyone, left, right, in between. I really don't care, because we're all humans. But the idea is that it shows the dependency that we've been brainwashed into on government at large. The idea that, they take care of us, or that the healthcare system that they provide us, or the food system that's aggregated by subsidies so that we can have genetically modified food and corporate farms. And it really comes down to, and I'll just spit it out. I mean, people will probably get mad, and you'll probably get some comments. I don't allow comments on my videos, but, it's the Big Daddy syndrome, I call it. Big Daddy's going to take care of us. And this is not the founding idealism of the initial foundation of the country. It's certainly, they made some mistakes there. I will not, justify those. But the main idea was rugged independence and limited government. So if we had that pervasive idea throughout the population right now, that to be free, you've got to act free, and to have freedom of choice and freedom of anything, it's not a gift. It's not given by government. It's given by God, but there's certain parameters that you must maintain in order to have it. And one of them is more self-sufficiency. So if we had a population that was, let's say, something like the 1950s population, or 1940s or whatever, I don't think there'd be as much chatter around the election and what if the election's delayed and what if the mail-in ballots come in and whatever. But it is the case right now. So what does that mean? It means further uncertainty, as you said. We're overusing that word. And fear. I think there's more fear in the market. And fear in the market is the worst emotion you can have, because it takes away the ability to logically judge an action that you may take in the near or later future. And so it's one of those take 2 deep breaths, take 2 aspirin, and think about it type of thing. So I hope I answered the question. I really wanted to get in my view on too much dependency. It's independency. And we're going to be taught that lesson because I'll just go on a little bit further. As things unravel more and more, regardless of the outcome of the election, they're unraveling. If it's D or R or I or 0 in the Oval Office, the long-term consequences will not really be that much different. I'll say it again, the long-term consequences will not be that much different. And it will force independence on the part of the people, even though, let's say, some people think that, Big Daddy will take care of me, or it can fix it, or it can provide for me, or it can take care of this issue, or it should take care of this issue, or why doesn't it take care of this issue? It's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call that we come into this world alone, we leave it alone, and if you are not connected on a basis of spirituality that can take you through to a level that you have greater depth and understanding of the meaning of humanity, and this is me speaking for me, no one else, you have lived a life that maybe didn't have as much meaning as it possibly could. So I think I'll leave it there.
I think you make a really good point. Like, if we look at the presidency, right, people are talking about this election being like the most consequential, right, ever. And it's like, it seems like that's what every election has been for the past, whatever, how many years. And it's like, well, let's say either it's being overhyped, or if it is super consequential, then maybe, to your point, we've kind of put too much power in the hands of the president, right? We've put too much power in government itself and too much trust that government can fix all the problems.
Exactly. I mean, that's my main point. And I could go on in that topic, and maybe someday I will make a video about it. But I'd like to hear your next question. But thank you, and thanks for the feedback.
Definitely. And what I wanted to discuss going forward here is, again, all this uncertainty, the economy, as we've talked about in the past, we're not really sure where it's heading. You've talked about recently about possible, food shortages. I mean, if we look back at what happened in March with the coronavirus, people not being able to get necessarily all the products that they want. So this whole thing about prepping has really become, instead of a fringe thing, more a mainstream thing. What is your perspective on possible food shortages in the future?
Yeah, 2 points. One I'd like to bring out before the 19 thing happened, that I was saying on my weekly updates, my weekly perspectives, that the world's global economy was contracting. So that was already set in stone, as they say, prior to the 19 situation popping up in March. And prior to that, I was saying, watch out for food. I mean, I just kept hitting it almost every week in my, weekly perspectives. And here we are, as you say, and the mainstream's picked it up. It's very upsetting to me to see how much food has been wasted recently because of supply chain breakdowns and inability to get animals to the slaughterhouse, and people not being able to do jobs because, they were quarantined off and all this stuff. I don't want to get too specific, but I think everyone gets a general idea that this disruption caused a huge disruption in the food supply. On top of that, you had weather incidents that caused disruptions, and then you had poor yields on normal planting seasons because they were disrupted. So we are facing, I think, globally, a food shortage coming up in, in some places, it's like there now, because people that are the huge unemployment in the United States, I mean, the food banks, a lot of them are saying, help us. We're running out. What used to be, 300 people in line is now 3 times as many, or 3,000 is 3 times as many, or, 100,000 is 3 times as many. In fact, there was an update I just listened to this morning that New Jersey is predicting, I think, a 50% increase in their population with food uncertainty over the next 6 months. So it concerns me a great deal, and I will be putting out on my free list at themorganreport.com, a emergency food supplier that you might want to consider. This is freeze-dried food, and it's very expensive. It's not like my top recommendation. It's really best suited for people that, one, could afford it, or two, people that want to have a grab and go. The thing that freeze-dried food is, it lasts 25 years and it's very lightweight because all the water's out of it. A better plan is to buy canned food and store it. Buy stuff you really like, stuff you can really eat. It's much cheaper. Shelf life is usually much longer than what's advertised on the can itself. So, that would be my recommendation. That way I'm not offending anybody. But the idea of emergency food, I've teamed up with, I think it's Patriot Foods. You could go to mealsbymorgan.com. That's mealsbymorgan.com. If you're interested, not a hard push. But just since we're on the topic, I just did my due diligence on it, and it's hard to get. I'm not trying to build a super sales pitch here, but it is getting tighter in supply across the board, no matter what. Emergency food, regular staples, rice, beans, just you name it, and some areas worse than others.
Kind of coming full circle here, back to the precious metals market. Some people have said, why would I invest in precious metals? If this crisis happens, you can't eat gold. What is your perspective on that? Like, that it's still a prudent idea. I would assume you'd say that even if a crisis does happen, to have some precious metals, to have some real money on hand.
Right. Yes, it is. You can't eat gold. I agree. I wrote an article about that years ago, Elijah, and I'm just doing it from memory, but I said, yep, can't eat gold. And you know what? You can't eat printed money either. If you look at what happened in even recent history, if you have silver in Venezuela, you were at an advantage to someone that didn't. You could buy food. You could buy it everywhere and instantly, and there wasn't a crisis. No, but it gave you a lot more ability to buy than someone that didn't have it. And an example I've used over and over, and if people that listen to most of my videos, please forgive me because you're going to hear it again. But, if you're at someone here in my local area that hunts and they don't have freezer space for, that half an elk, the chances of me being able to obtain the other half with silver is far superior to someone wants to give them a new iPhone in trade, or someone that wants to give them, another electronic gadget, or whatever. And maybe they needed something, they didn't need silver or want it. They wanted, let's just say someone to finish framing their house. So that would be their choice. But the idea is, precious metals, especially silver, in a collapse environment, or crisis environment, I should say, because when things collapse, they don't really collapse. What collapses is the trust in the system. But all the schools, all the churches, all the roads, all the farms, all that stuff pretty much stays intact. I say pretty much because a lot of the farms are disrupted, as I just mentioned, and I want to be consistent. But overall, most of the wealth stays in place. The collapse means is, how do I pay for it? How do I finish, this apartment building when I can't get the workers to come back to work? Or what happens with this house that I've been paying on for 20 years, and now I can't afford the mortgage, and now I'm in forbearance, but 2 months from now I won't be, and I don't have enough savings to keep it. I should be able to. I've been paying on it for 20 years. It's not my fault the economy collapsed, and that type of thing. And you take that and you multiply it by 10% of the population, or to use John Williams' statistics, 25% of the population, we've got a real problem here. And that's just in the United States, 4% of the world's population. Multiply that by 25, and that's the global situation. So this is not something to be taken lightly. And I know I might sound like a Cassandra, and I don't mean to, but I'm also, as I said, it's my head and my heart, and I'm telling people, get prepared. I will say it. I am a little more fearful than I was, say, 8-9 months out, where I didn't really see the degree of the food problem and the degree of social unrest. I saw both of them. I did. But I didn't see them at the level that they're currently at now, where I see they're probably going to go.
We all hope that doesn't happen, but being prepared, I think, is a prudent thing to be. So thank you, David, for joining us today on the Miles Franklin Market Update. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers where they can find you and any last thoughts you had?
Yeah, I think the main thing I'd like to share is, to thy own self be true. Prepare. If you're mentally prepared for the worst case, and it usually isn't the worst case, it will appear in some locations, you can get through a lot easier or better than you could if you just ignore it and say, well, that guy's full of it. You don't have to entertain my ideas fully, but at least contemplate them and then back off. I think at extremes, I was taught to think that way as an engineer, and I think it's actually a good way to moderate between the worst this or the best that, and know that the probability is not necessarily a bell curve, but something close to it. It's probably going to be something in the middle. And on that theme, I'll just say, and I know I'm getting along at the close here, what if this election doesn't go the way that most of us expect? What if, it does close on the date and there is enough mail in there and all that, and it's just like a non-event? Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but again, that's something to think about. Think at extremes. Well, if this and this, well, what if the opposite happens? Then what would occur? But again, I think regardless, if that did occur, which is unlikely in my view, it doesn't change the long-term scheme of things as we've already discussed.
Definitely. Once again, David Morgan from the Morgan Report, thank you so much for your time today.
Elijah, thanks for having me.